There are moments in life that seem harmless when they happen, just quiet seconds in time, but later, when everything collapses, you look back and wish you had paid attention to the feeling in your chest. Claire didn't know that this peaceful morning in Harrows Lake, with its cool mountain air and soft mist hovering over the water, would become the moment she replayed in her mind for years. She stood outside the rustic lodge where she was getting ready, her white dress brushing her ankles, and whispered a small prayer for a beautiful wedding day. Then she walked toward the vintage Mercedes waiting to take her to the ceremony. A car she'd been excited about since the moment she first saw it. She reached out gently and placed her hand on the hood, a simple touch. A symbolic blessing. A quiet thank you. And then everything changed. At first, Claire thought she imagined the soft crackling sound coming from beneath the hood. The mountains around her were full of noises, pine branches rustling, birds calling across the lake, the distant hum of boats. But this sound was sharp, unfamiliar, and it seemed to rise from the metal under her palm. She pulled her hand back, confused, narrowing her eyes the way she always did when trying to make sense of something that didn't feel right. A thin curl of smoke slipped out from the front grille. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked once, twice, wondering if maybe the fog rolling down from the cliffs had blended with her imagination. But then the smoke thickened. Her heart thudded. This was real. Before she could call for help, a sudden hiss erupted, a sound so violent it sliced through the quiet morning like a scream. The front of the car burst into flame. A bright, angry blossom of fire that made Claire stumble backward in shock. Her bouquet fell from her hands, petals scattering across the gravel like pieces of a promise she wasn't ready to lose. Her bridesmaids, who were chatting by the lodge door, gasped and rushed toward her. Someone screamed her name. Someone else shouted for water. But Claire couldn't move. It was as if her feet were stuck in the earth beneath her, glued by fear and disbelief. She never imagined fire could move like that, fast, hungry, twisting upward as if reaching for something only it could see. The smell of burning rubber filled the air. Sparkling embers floated upward like fireflies gone wrong. And all she could think, over and over, was one impossible question: did this happen because she touched it? People always said Harrows Lake was a place where things felt heavier, emotions, memories, even the stories that families whispered about the mountains or the water. But Claire never believed any of that. She grew up here. She knew these hills, these trees, these paths. To her, this town wasn't mystical or strange, it was home. And yet, as she stared at the burning car, she felt something she had never felt before in her 27 years living by the lake, a chilling sense that this moment wasn't just an accident. It felt connected to something deeper inside her, something she didn't understand. Her soon-to-be husband Ethan sprinted toward her from around the back of the lodge, his tie half-fastened, his face twisted with worry. "Claire," he shouted. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but her voice wouldn't come. She couldn't tell him the truth. She didn't know the truth yet. Before we go deeper into this story, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We would truly love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's return to Claire. As the fire crew rushed in and the lodge staff scrambled with extinguishers, Ethan wrapped his arms around her, his breath shaky with relief. He thought she was simply overwhelmed by the shock of it all. But deep inside, Claire felt something else brewing, a quiet storm she couldn't yet name. Because even through the chaos, she remembered the exact second the car ignited. It was right after she touched it. A soft touch. A touch she had done without thinking, almost instinctively. She kept repeating that moment in her mind, wondering why it felt so significant, like her hand had awakened something sleeping. The firefighters arrived quickly. Harrows Lake's volunteer fire department was small but efficient, made up of neighbors who knew every road, every cabin, every back trail. They extinguished the flames with practiced movements, their boots crunching over wet gravel as steam rose from the melted hood. Claire watched from a distance, her arms wrapped around herself as if she were holding her own trembling together. Someone draped her in a shawl, but she barely felt it. Her eyes were locked on the car. The fire chief, a man named Howard who'd been friends with Claire's family for decades, approached Ethan quietly and whispered something. Ethan nodded, then looked toward Claire with a mixture of concern and confusion. She could tell he wanted to ask her something important, but he held back. Right now wasn't the time. Or maybe he wasn't sure she could handle the question. But Claire saw it in his eyes anyway. He wondered whether she had noticed something unusual before the fire started. Whether she had heard a noise, smelled something strange, or seen any warning signs. And Claire wished she could give him an answer, because answering would feel like taking control of a day that was already slipping away from her. But she couldn't. She hadn't seen anything. She hadn't heard anything. All she had done was place her hand on the hood, the same way her mother once taught her to, thank anything that carries you. Claire never took that advice seriously. It was just one of those traditions passed down in Harrows Lake families. Harmless. Gentle. More sentimental than spiritual. So why did it feel like that touch mattered? Why did her heart twist with guilt when she thought of it? And why, deep inside, did she feel responsible for the fire? As the firefighters continued their work, the wedding planner rushed around trying to figure out how to salvage the rest of the day. Guests had been notified that the ceremony would be delayed. Some were already on their way to the lakeside chapel, while others waited inside the lodge, whispering about what they had just witnessed. But Claire didn't hear any of it clearly, everything sounded muffled, like she was underwater. Her mind drifted back to something she hadn't thought about in years, her father's words the night before he left Harrows Lake for good. She had been 13. They stood near the same lodge, near the same road, and he had said, "There are things you shouldn't touch, Claire. Some things bring memories you're not ready for." She didn't understand him then. She barely remembered the context. But today, that warning hit her differently. It felt connected. Too connected. Ethan guided her back inside the lodge to calm her down. The interior smelled of pine wood and vanilla candles, the same scent Claire always loved because it reminded her of home. But today, even that comforting smell felt distant. She sat slowly on a cushioned bench, holding the shawl tightly, her fingers digging into the fabric. Ethan knelt in front of her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Claire, look at me," he whispered gently. She lifted her eyes to his, searching for something steady. "You're okay. That's all that matters." She nodded, but inside, she felt a weight pressing on her ribs. She wanted to tell him about her father. About the strange feeling she had right before the fire. But she didn't know how to explain any of it without sounding afraid of her own thoughts. So she remained quiet, hoping the feeling would fade. It didn't. As minutes passed inside the lodge, the shock slowly turned into a restless unease. The kind that makes your skin feel too tight, like something inside you is trying to speak but can't find the words. Claire stared out the window at the smoldering remains of the car. Steam drifted upward in gentle ribbons, the fire now reduced to a damp ruin. The firefighters were packing their gear. The wedding planner was on the phone, arranging a replacement vehicle. But Claire, she was stuck in her own thoughts. She remembered touching the car. The cool metal. The soft hum beneath it. That hum stood out to her, not mechanical, not normal. More like a faint vibration, as though the car had recognized her. She shook her head at the thought. It didn't make sense. Cars didn't react to people. And yet her instincts, the same instincts that had protected her all her life, felt unsettled. Finally, someone knocked at the door. It was Fire Chief Howard. His expression was calm but serious, the kind of expression that made people straighten their backs. He stepped inside and nodded politely at Ethan before turning to Claire. "I just need to ask you a few questions," he said gently. "Purely routine." Claire swallowed hard and nodded. He sat across from her, taking off his helmet and placing it beside him. "Did you hear anything before the fire started? Any sounds? Or notice any leaks or smells?" She shook her head slowly. "No, nothing like that." Howard studied her for a moment. "Did you touch the car before it started?" The question made her chest tighten. She hesitated, then nodded. Just lightly, for a second. Howard didn't react strongly. He simply nodded and wrote something in his small notebook. But Claire noticed how Ethan stiffened beside her. Howard closed his notebook and offered Claire a soft, reassuring smile. "It was likely an engine issue," he said. "Old car, warm morning, cooling system struggling. These things happen." He spoke with confidence, as if he had already solved the puzzle. But Claire didn't feel relieved. Because even though she trusted Howard, everyone in town trusted him, she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. Something that had nothing to do with engines or overheating. After Howard left, Ethan sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked again, his voice filled with worry. Claire wanted to say yes. But the truth sat in her throat like a stone. "Ethan," she whispered. "Do you ever feel like something from your past follows you, even when you think you've left it behind?" Ethan paused, confused. "What do you mean?" Claire took a shaky breath. "I'm not sure yet." In the days that followed, Claire carried herself with a new sense of clarity. She didn't dismiss her past, nor did she cling to it. Instead, she began asking questions, gentle questions, about her father's childhood, his fears, the stories he never finished telling. She read old journals, sifted through photographs, pieced together fragments of a man who struggled more deeply than he ever admitted. And with each piece she uncovered, she felt compassion rather than fear. The fire no longer frightened her, it reminded her of how close she came to letting old patterns shape her future. She chose differently. She chose healing. And in doing so, she rewrote the ending her father never found. One morning, as she stood on the balcony watching sunlight spill across the city, she felt something she had not felt in years, a soft, quiet certainty that the echoes of the past had finally, truly fallen silent. Subscribe and turn on the notification for more stories like this.